Elements of fiction. Setting. Setting is the physical and social context in which the action of a story occurs. The major elements of setting are the time, the place, and the social environment that frames the characters. These elements establish the world in which the characters act. Sometimes, the setting is lightly sketched, presented only because the story has to take place somewhere and at some time. Often, however, the setting is more important, giving the reader the feel of the people who move through it. Setting can be used to evoke a mood or atmosphere that will prepare the reader for what is to come. Example: on Saturday morning, the family packed the car and left for a camping trip on Mount Vista. Later that day, Mr. Maxim and the two boys left their campsite and headed up the mountain. A sudden snowstorm swept through the area that night, and Monday morning, a distressed Mrs. Maxim walked to the nearest state police post to report that her husband and boys were missing. Here, the settings are the family home, the campsite, and the police station. As you read, note different characters and settings, and how a setting can influence what characters do, or how they speak. For example, at home, Mrs. Maxim might be very calm and friendly, but at the police station, she may stammer or cry, as she speaks very formally to the officers. Setting can be divided into three main elements. 1. Setting of places. 2. Setting of time. 3. Social setting. Setting places, referring to the location of the events recounted in a work of fiction. Setting of time, dealing with the problem of when, the occurrence of the events recounted in a work of fiction. Time means two things: 1. Clock time, and 2. Psychological time. Clock time is a measure to determine time in terms of duration: hours, days, weeks, and years. Psychological time has no relation to clock time. It is experienced by the individual and is subjective. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the novelists preferred to set the story within a chronologically determined time. For example, the novel started with the childhood, or the girlhood, or boyhood of a character, and ended at some particular stage in her or his life. The time sense was simple. But, with the emergence of the stream of consciousness novel, the novelists started using psychological time. Psychological time shifts constantly, from the past to the present, and to the future. Novelists who make use of the psychological time to narrate their story take the help of techniques such as flashback, dreams, and fantasies. Social setting refer to matters relating to social behavior in a place that is told in a work of fiction. Social background could include living habits, customs, traditions, beliefs, outlook on life, ways of thinking and being, and social status. Events in an assumed story take place in a certain order. For instance, a child is born, grows up, marries, leads a contented life, dies. This order of events might be abbreviated as A, B, C, D, E. A narrative can tell about these events chronologically, in the order in which they occurred: A, B, C, D, E. But it could just as well start with the character's death, then recall the birth, childhood, marriage, married life. The order of discourse would then look like this: E, A, B, C, D. Discourse could deviate from chronology more radically and present events in orders, such as C, A, B, E, D, or A, C, D, E, B, and so on. In such cases, events are not told in chronological order, they are anachronological. When the chronological order of events is changed in discourse, certain techniques are employed to reveal the whole story nonetheless. The most common of these techniques are flash forward, prolepsis, and flashback, analepsis. In a discourse order of B, C, D, A, E, the section, the birth, in our example, would represent a flashback. In the order A, E, B, C, D, the section, E, death, in our example, would represent a flash forward. A prolepsis is often merely a short remark, as in this example. A DA called to me to let her in, but I said, "Not now, my dearest. Go away. There's nothing the matter. I will come to you presently." It was a long, long time before my darling girl and I were companions again. In narrative, unlike in drama, film or picture stories, space has to be presented verbally. It thus exists, ultimately, only in the reader's imagination. On the other hand, the description of space in narrative tends to be more detailed than it is possible in a drama's primary text. Readers create their notions of fictional space from their own experience in the real world. That is to say, a person's ideas of how houses, gardens, parks, streets, etc. look is dependent on that person's actual experience of houses, gardens, parks, and streets. In turn, convincing descriptions of spatial dimensions in a narrative serve to increase the narrative's authenticity. It provides a link to the reader's reality. Readers tend to imagine the characters moving through real space as they do themselves. Setting can provide a certain atmosphere. Darkness and narrow spaces, for instance, are commonly associated with threatening or restrictive atmospheres. Wide open or sunlit spaces create an atmosphere of freedom. Such atmospheres can then be used to provide a characteristic background for a character.